I don't even know where to begin because there's so much to say about it. There were just a lot of really strange things that I remembered all throughout my childhood, all the way up to 28, that were just odd, like pieces of a puzzle that, like, the puzzle wasn't put together yet. And what I mean by that is, when I was growing up, my grandma, whenever I would go to visit her, um, I wasn't allowed to wear a dress or shorts because she said that a rapist would get us if, like me and my other female cousins, she said a rapist would get us if we wore a dress or shorts. And we just grew up with that and it was just normal. But then when I became an adult, I was like, that's a strange thing to say to all your grandchildren when they come to visit. And I also remember just thinking that my grandpa was just really scary and really creepy. And when I would spend the night at my grandparents' house, I would, and everybody would get ready and go to bed, and my grandma would go to the bedroom with my grandpa. And I remember thinking to myself, how can she go to bed with him? How can she sleep in the same bed with him? He's just so creepy. Well, I just never questioned, like, why did I think he was so creepy? And and then my cousin, he was a lot older than me. Um, I would say at least 10 years older than me or more. And when I was growing up, I was terrified of him. But I had no reason, nothing that I remembered. No reason to be terrified of him. When I entered middle school, junior high, when I was like 12 or 13 years old, that's the age when kids were starting to talk about having sex with each other. And I was just shocked. One of the most popular boys in school sat next to me and he liked me and wanted to be my boyfriend, but he had blonde hair. And my brother that, abused me had blonde hair. I was so terrified that this, adolescent boy with blonde hair wanted me to be his girlfriend. And then all these kids are like, oh, he's the most popular boy in school and he wants you to be his girlfriend. And I thought, oh my God, they want me to have sex with him. That's what I thought in my head. Like I just made this leap to sex. And I thought the whole school is going to be expecting me to have sex with him. So I just like shut down, like had this weird kind of nervous breakdown, but didn't know why. I didn't know what was wrong with me. And I refused to go to school. Nobody knew why I wouldn't go to school. They kept sending me to the counselor's office, and the counselor was trying to find out why I wouldn't go to school. And I couldn't tell him. I didn't know why. Um, and my mom would try to bribe me to go to school, offer to, you know, buy me things that I wanted or take me to my favorite restaurant or something. And I would try to go to school, but then I would end up going to the nurse's office and spending the day, laying on a cot in the nurse's office. I got married when I was 21, and the man I married was basically my first real boyfriend, the first, real like sexual relationship that I had. And after a while, every time we had sex, I just started having flashbacks like that I was being raped. And I I had to, tell him to stop. I feel like I'm being raped. I said, I know you're not raping me, but for some reason I keep thinking that I'm being raped. And it just didn't make any sense. It was just crazy. So when I was 25, my son was born. And then when my son was 2.5, um, I had really bad anxiety, and I was seeing a therapist, and I was like, what's wrong with me? Why do I have such bad anxiety? She didn't know what it was. She just said something is coming up emotionally that needs to be dealt with. And I was like, what? Because it never even occurred to me that I could be repressing anything. And so then I started thinking about it. And ever since I was 5 years old, I acted out all of this sexual abuse with my Barbie dolls. And I mean, it was like really elaborate sexual abuse. And, um, it was something that I was always really embarrassed and really ashamed and really humiliated that I was acting out all of this really elaborate sexual abuse with all these Barbie dolls and the Ken dolls and all the Ken dolls were like these sexual predators preying on all the Barbies um and it was like this secret that I had. I didn't want anybody to know I was doing this because I felt like, what is wrong with me? Why am I doing this? But it was like a compulsion that I had to keep acting it out, and I didn't know why. And so when I was feeling all that anxiety, and my therapist said, something emotionally is coming up for you to. And so I told her about what I was doing with my dolls when I was a child. And she said, how old were you when you started doing this? And I said, 5. And um, she said, a 5-year-old wouldn't know all of that, all of that sexual, behavior unless it had been done to them. And that's when it was like a dam just breaking. That's when everything just started flooding, into my memories. Well, and so what actually happened was it all started with body memories. So after that counseling session, I got in my car and I felt like somebody's hand was touching my genitals, like rubbing me. I was like, what is going on? And so then when I was feeling that, I was having flashbacks at the same time. It's kind of like you're having a dream, but you're awake. So I was feeling it in my body, and I was having the memories playing out in my head. And I was seeing my grandpa and I was seeing my brother. And then at night I would have nightmares about it, and I would I couldn't even get more than 4 hours of sleep a night. One night I had a dream that my grandpa and my brother were chasing me around a bed with a stick, and they wanted to sodomize me. When I woke up, my rectum was all torn open and bleeding. And I was like, oh my God, like what is happening to me? I felt like I was completely losing my mind, like going crazy, but this is happening to my body. So what's happening to my body? And so I called my therapist on the phone and I said, what is happening to me? And she goes, congratulations. You're releasing the memories at a cellular level. You're releasing the memories, from your body. And she said most women go their whole life and never release the memories that deeply. And she's like, this is a good thing. And I'm thinking, I'm bleeding and I'm in so much pain I can barely walk. And she's congratulating me. My mom took a lot of pictures when we were growing up, and so we had a lot of photo albums. So I always remembered looking at the photo albums, and I always remember thinking I was happy, and then right here I wasn't happy anymore. And that was another like piece of the puzzle that I was always knew was there. Like I'm happy, happy, happy. Oh, and right here I'm not happy anymore. And so I went back to look at that piece of the puzzle, and I go, what was going on right here when I stopped being happy? I was 2.5 years old, and my parents went out of town on vacation, which meant that my grandparents, we had to go stay with my grandparents to be babysat. So when my son was 2.5, it triggered my memories. When I was 28 and told my parents about the sexual abuse, my dad calls me on the phone and he's like the most angry I've ever heard him in my whole life. And he said, you're a liar and a troublemaker and you're trying to ruin our good family name. And he said, I'm disowning you. And I was like, there's no way I'm making this up. I mean, after everything that I uncovered, everything I realized, the Barbie dolls, how I felt about my grandpa, how I felt about my cousin, how I felt about my brother, what I remember in the photo albums, all the body memories, all the nightmares, I'm bleeding. I mean, and he's telling me I'm a liar and disowning me. And so then I thought, did he do something? Because that's a really kind of exaggerated reaction. It was crazy because my parents disowned me, but then on the holidays, they would tell me to come over because they didn't want any of the relatives to know there was anything wrong. And that made me so mad. 10 years later, I completely and totally disowned the entire family. What happened was every time I saw them, I would get so depressed and so emotionally upset that a group of my friends confronted me and had almost like an intervention, and they said, you get so upset every time you see your family, and they said, we don't want you to have contact with them anymore. You need to cut off contact with them. So I gave my family, I gave each one of them a letter, and I said, look, I went through all this abuse, and I said, if you're not willing to acknowledge it and apologize to me, I don't want to have contact with you anymore ever again. And I knew they weren't going to acknowledge it or apologize. And so that was it. So 2007, I disowned them.